Hi there, I'm Rick, creator of Revelation Skirmish, which is a destructive combined arms miniatures game that you can 3D print from home. In this video, I'm going to be assembling a ORCA Renatus WarMech miniature. You can purchase this model from our site, link is in the description below. Now this version of the Renatus kit is made up of 9 parts with the medium or the 50mm WarMech base. Now as always, when it comes to Revelation Skirmish, if you see notches on the base anywhere, those are going to indicate the rear arc. So this particular kit has a little bit of a challenge, but we can overcome it plenty easy enough. And that is because it only has 1 foot of the 2 feet on the base. Now that's probably also a good time to go ahead and point out what are the parts of this particular kit with the Renatus. And so you're going to have the torso, the jumper pack, which will plug in here to the back later, the thruster nozzle for the jumper pack, the medium repeater for also mounted to the rear of the torso. You're going to have the pelvis, the left and the right leg, and then you're going to have a left and right arm, which are the TBM launchers for the Renatus. So for this, I'm going to just be using some Zap-A-Gap super glue, and it's going to be important to kind of quickly get this anchored to the base because this particular pose can't really stand super well without that. So the first thing I want to go ahead and do is I'm going to glue on the pelvis to the right leg because that's going to be how the machine is steady. And I want to try to find where the pelvis is going to rest with a little bit tilting forward. And it's also worth pointing out when it comes to the pelvis for either the Sierra or the Renatus, because they are actually the same platform, the pointy part of the pelvis is going to indicate the front of the pelvis. If you see this kind of square panel, that's going to be for the back, okay? So we're going to put just a tiny little bit of glue here, tiny little bit. I don't really need to use too much. And I'm going to go ahead and plug this in, making sure that I'm keeping the right foot flat. So then that way, when it comes time later, it's gonna be more how I want it to be. Go ahead and just release that, and that's already moving forward. Now we're gonna go ahead and start figuring out where the left leg is gonna go. In this particular pose, the left leg is forward while the right leg is back. So I wanna try to find a good place for that as I glue that on. Plug that in, and it's supposed to simulate like it's running forward, so it's about ready to drop that foot down. So I don't want to actually have it touching the base. I want it to be raised. You may want to angle the leg so that it is in fact touching the base. That's totally up to you. And while we're kind of waiting for the left leg to dry anyway, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of glue here. I'm not going to glue all of it because this one is actually going to end up getting painted. And basically what I'm aiming for, I know that I want the torso to be pointed directly forward, so I know that I can kind of get a really good idea of where I want this angled. But I want to make sure that that right foot is further back on the base, so then that way the left foot isn't hanging off the front of the base, because that would not be super beneficial for me. You know what, because we actually don't have the other foot to balance this, let's put a little bit more glue and set it there. We're going to hold this here for a moment. All right, now that we got the foot glued in place, we're just going to go ahead and slide that over while that continues to dry. And let's go ahead and start assembling the torso here. So the easy thing to do first would be to go ahead and take the jumper pack and to kind of just make sure it's going to all fit. Whenever you get the pieces directly from us, you're always going to want to spend a little bit of time kind of just cleaning them. And if you 3D print them yourself, obviously you're going to have to clean off print nubs and other stuff like that from just the 3D printing process. And the thruster pack here, kind of as much as you can get it centered. We left a little bit of wiggle room so that it would easily fit, but you don't probably want it too far to one side or anything. You want to try to make sure it's kind of level. And then as that's drying, we're going to be taking the thruster nozzle and we're going to be gluing that into the center cavity there. Now the thruster nozzle is the same shape no matter which way you put it. It will fit in let's say vertically, so the skinnier part, not turning it sideways, and then that'll plug in there. So what we'll do, go ahead and put a tiny bit of glue here. Doesn't need a whole lot, shouldn't need a whole lot. Just pop that in there, and then you'll see it's kind of wiggling around a little bit so that you can kind of angle it how you'd like. I'm gonna have mine kind of angled downward because the mech's obviously not using its jump ability, it's just running. That way we'll kind of just angle it like that, and that should be good enough for now. But I do want to try to make sure it is centered. I don't want it to be tilted at all. It's pretty good. All right, and since we're going to be holding this here anyway, we can go ahead and start gluing on the repeater. And with the repeaters, before I glue that, there's a cavity here for the Renatus is going to be on the left side. And you can kind of decide how you want to angle this particular weapon, whether you want it, you know, tilted back farther, aiming lower. And then we also have different posed parts, so you can kind of really customize this to be in the angle that you want it to be. So I'm going to want mine kind of aiming just maybe straight on forward with a little bit of a tilt upward, only because the torso is going to be slightly angled downward. So I don't want it to be totally down. Something like that. Okay. And there's no point in doing the missiles yet. I want to get the torso mounted to the pelvis, because that way I can really make sure that the arms are going to be tilted in the direction that I really want them to be, so that the machine feels a little bit more, you know, deadly. So there's that little ball joint cavity there on the bottom. So like I said, I want this to be leaning forward somewhat. So trying to find where I want it to be. Maybe I'll tilt it up a little bit because of the way that that medium repeater is angled. And it's probably a good idea, if I want this to be looking straight, to make sure I see it looking straight at me. So then that way it dries the best. Now that we got the torso done, we're going to start gluing on the arms. Doesn't really matter which order I'm going to go in. I'm going to start with the left, just because I'm kind of already in position for that. And I want it tilted slightly upward, but also still even as best I can. Okay, now for the other side. And I want them to try to match each other. I don't really want one aimed in a different way, so we're going to just carefully set that in there. Try to eyeball that at an even level. All right, and there we go. Got our brand new Renatus all assembled and ready to start playing. So thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to purchase the Renatus here, you can click the link in the description or go to our web store. Thanks for watching.